Last Tuesday evening, I pulled up to our house in the quiet little town of Ashford-on-Avon and stepped inside, expecting the usual warmth. Instead, I found myself on the outside of a plan I never saw coming. My wife, Claire, was plotting to ghost me for an entire week. Not out of anger or after an argument, but because her workmates had convinced her it was some kind of fun experiment to test how much I really valued her. I come home early from running errands. As I pulled in through the garage, I caught Claire's voice echoing from the kitchen, loud and clear on speakerphone. She was chatting with her 3 closest colleagues, Tanya, Amanda, and Jen, the same trio that had been feeding her these wild ideas for months now. I froze just inside the mudroom, hidden but close enough to catch every word. "You're way too available to him, Claire," Tanya was saying, sounding like she just solved world peace. "Men don't appreciate what they can have whenever they want." Amanda jumped in. "My boyfriend was taking me for granted until I started the 3-day rule. Now he practically begs for my attention." Claire sounded hesitant. "I don't know, girls. Tom and I have always had good communication. This feels dishonest." "Not dishonest," Jen said firmly. "Strategic. You're putting yourself back on the pedestal, the prize, not the participant." Tanya nodded. "My therapist calls it creating healthy space. You're not ignoring him, just showing you have a life beyond his needs." Amanda grinned. "Start this weekend. Ghost him for a whole week. No texts, no calls, minimal chatting at home. Just be busy and distant. 7 days. 7 days." Claire said, her voice tight. "That sounds extreme." "Trust me," Tanya said. "My cousin did this with her fiancé last year. By day 3, he was sending flowers. Day 5, he planned a weekend away. By day 7, he'd upgraded her ring." I gripped the door frame to steady myself. My heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Jen added, "I want to see how quickly he panics. The key is not to break first." Amanda's advice was precise. When he asks what's wrong, say you're busy with work stuff. Keep it vague. The uncertainty will make him appreciate you more. Claire's voice wavered. "What if he doesn't react? What if he just carries on with his life?" Tanya laughed. "Then you know he doesn't really value your relationship, and you can make decisions accordingly. But trust me, no man lets his wife ignore him completely without trying to figure out what's wrong. Think of it as a test." Amanda summed it up. "If he loves you, he'll fight for your attention. If he doesn't, better to find out now." I heard Claire sigh, a mix of resignation and curiosity. "I guess it makes sense. I felt like maybe he's taking me for granted lately, like our routine's gotten too comfortable." Jen's voice was sharp. "Comfortable equals complacent. Shake things up, establish dominance, and watch him remember why he married you." "Start this weekend," Tanya said. "We'll check in every day. This is going to be so empowering." I'd heard enough. These women weren't just giving Claire bad advice. They were convincing her to treat our marriage like some social experiment for their entertainment. But the part that turned my stomach wasn't the advice itself. It was hearing Claire actually consider it. The woman I'd been married to for 5 years, the woman I'd been honest and faithful to every single day, planning to ignore me for 7 whole days just to assert some weird dominance. Part of me wanted to storm into that kitchen and call them all out, to tell them exactly what I thought about their manipulative games, to tell Claire that I deserved better. But then a cold, calculating thought settled in. If she wanted to ghost me, she was about to learn a very important lesson about the man she married. I don't beg. I don't chase. And I sure as hell don't play games with someone who treats me like a lab rat. She wanted to ghost me? Fine. I'd ghost the entire marriage. Quietly, I slipped back out through the garage, got in my car, and drove to Confluence Park, sitting by the winding Avon River. The night air was crisp, and the water shimmered under the street lamps as I began plotting. 7 days. That's all I had while Claire played her little game. 7 days to prepare for the moment she'd come home expecting desperation and pleading. Instead, she'd find an empty closet and an empty bank account. I pulled out my phone and started making notes. Secure finances, find a rental, pack strategically, consult a lawyer, document everything. No ambiguity, no loose ends. This wasn't about revenge. It was about self-respect. When someone shows you they're willing to manipulate you for entertainment, believe them the first time. 45 minutes later, I was back home. Claire's call had ended, and she was humming in the kitchen, making dinner with a slight smile of triumph on her lips. She felt empowered. Little did she know what was coming. "Hey, love," she chirped as I walked in and kissed my cheek. The kind of affection I knew I wouldn't see for a week. "The store was out of the primer I needed," I said calmly. "I'll grab it this weekend." She nodded absent-mindedly, already rehearsing her week-long disappearing act. That night, lying in the dark, I studied her profile. Claire looked almost energized, excited even. She had no idea what she'd just set in motion. Tomorrow was Friday. Her ghosting campaign would begin. By next Friday, day 7, I had to be gone. Moved out and financially separated. I smiled to myself. The game was on. Friday evening rolled in like clockwork, and with it, Claire's carefully crafted act. I pushed open the front door to find her sitting stiffly in the living room, phone in hand, eyes glued to the screen like it was a lifeline. Not a flicker of recognition when I said hello. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "How was your day?" She glanced up briefly, her expression cool and distant. "Busy. Got a lot going on with the Henderson project at work." Then her gaze dropped back to the phone like I was a ghost she was pretending not to see. "Want to order in, or should I cook?" I asked, hoping to break through the wall she was building. "Whatever," she mumbled without looking up. "I'm not that hungry." Day 1. The first day of her ghosting experiment. I nodded slowly, as if I'd expected nothing less, and made my way to the kitchen. I cooked dinner for the two of us anyway, roast chicken, her favorite herb potatoes, and steamed asparagus. I plated it carefully, bringing a dish to the living room. She barely acknowledged it with a muttered thanks before retreating to the home office, closing the door behind her. So this was how it started. Her little test to see if I'd panic, beg for her attention, ask, "What's wrong?" 100 times. "Sorry, Claire. Wrong husband for that." While she sat alone, thinking she was asserting dominance, I was calmly scrolling through apartment listings on my phone. I'd already called a solicitor during lunch, opened a separate bank account at a different branch, and made mental notes on what to pack. Saturday morning, Claire was in full performance mode. She drifted through the house with her laptop, earbuds in, barely acknowledging me. I announced I was heading out for a few hours. She barely nodded. I spent the day ticking off my plan with military precision. First stop, Ashford Savings Bank on King Street. I transferred exactly half of our joint savings into my new individual account, leaving her half untouched. I took screenshots, saved receipts, documented everything to the penny. Next, I met with my solicitor, Mr. Henderson, in the Curtis Park district. We talked through legal separation, division of assets, and started the paperwork. The timeline was tight, everything ready by next Friday. Then, I toured a furnished one-bedroom flat in the Highland neighborhood. It was neat and cozy, with exposed brick walls and a view of the city skyline from the bay window. Month-to-month lease, available immediately. I signed the lease on the spot and grabbed the keys. My fourth stop was a storage facility on Federal Road. I rented a unit to stage my belongings before moving them to the new place. Another paper trail proving my intentions. By the time I got home that evening, Claire was holed up in the bedroom, door shut, voice carrying faint laughter from her video call with her coworkers. They were probably congratulating her on how well the ghosting was going, checking if I'd cracked yet. If only they knew. Sunday was more of the same. Claire was a ghost in her own home. Short answers. No eye contact. Always busy. I caught her in the living room once as I walked past. "Morning," I said with a small smile. She glanced up from her phone, gave me a tight, polite smile, but said nothing, eyes darting back down. This version of me didn't chase. I just nodded and moved on. I spent the day doing a mental inventory of our life together. What belonged to me, what was hers, and what we'd bought together. I started a spreadsheet on my laptop, color-coded and itemized. That evening, While Claire soaked in a deliberately long bath with the door locked, I began packing. Not a frantic scramble, but a steady, deliberate process. I chose items she wouldn't notice missing right away. Out-of-season clothes from the back of the wardrobe, books from the lower shelves, tools from the garage, important documents from my desk drawer, my grandfather's old pocket watch, and a few sentimental keepsakes. 2 large boxes were packed and loaded into my car after she'd gone to bed, the first of many. Her little test was going to cost her a lot more than she thought. As I closed the trunk, I couldn't help but smirk. If she wanted to play ghost, I'd become a phantom she couldn't catch. Tomorrow, the plan would pick up speed. Monday morning arrived with the kind of chill that made me think winter was sneaking in early. Claire was already gone when I got up. Out the door before 7. No goodbye. No have a good day. Her ghosting was in full effect, and honestly, it was like living with a very demanding, very silent roommate who refused to acknowledge your existence. I poured myself a strong black coffee, the aroma filling the kitchen, and sat down at the table with my laptop. Time to keep moving. Today was all about the little things that would add up to the big picture. First on the list was another trip to the storage unit. I loaded up boxes with kitchenware, pots, pans, the fancy blender she never used, and some electronics. My gaming console, headphones, the smart speaker we'd bought as a joint gift but that I was claiming now. I was methodical, almost clinical, like a surgeon removing a tumor one careful cut at a time. Back at the house, Claire was somewhere distant, probably still on speakerphone with Tanya and the gang. I could hear the faint buzz through the bedroom door, laughter punctuating their whispered check-ins. "Is he freaking out yet?" one asked. "Stay strong, Claire. You're killing it," another said. What they couldn't see was me, calmly organizing my life, ticking off boxes on my mental to-do list like a man who knew exactly what he wanted, and how to get it. By mid-afternoon, I was back at the solicitor's office, finalizing details. Mr. Henderson gave me a look that mixed sympathy and professional detachment. "You're handling this well," he said. "Most clients lose their minds at the first sign of trouble." I shrugged. "I'm not most clients." Next up was a meeting with the rental agency to confirm my new flat's utilities and internet setup. I figured if I was going to disappear for a week, I'd better have Wi-Fi that actually worked. No one wants to be ghosted with buffering. When I returned home, the place was quieter than usual. Claire's door was shut again, and the muffled sound of her voice on the phone continued. I caught a glimpse of her through the crack in the doorway, dressed in a sleek black blouse, tight dark jeans, and knee-high boots that clicked sharply on the hardwood floor whenever she moved. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, a few strands framing her face, and a delicate silver necklace caught the light as she gestured animatedly at the screen. There was an odd, almost electric tension in the air, like she was performing for an audience that existed only in that room. I took a deep breath and went about my business. Later, I packed what I called the emergency essentials: clothes, toiletries, my laptop charger, a few personal mementos, into a sturdy duffel bag. I left it in the car, ready for quick exit. As evening fell, I made dinner again. Claire didn't join me at the table, instead retreating to her sanctuary with her plate and phone. I watched her silhouette from the doorway, her legs crossed, the soft curve of her neck as she leaned forward into the screen. It was almost hypnotic, but I wasn't about to be hypnotized. I was already planning my real escape, and as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I knew one thing for sure. While Claire was busy trying to prove a point, I was quietly rewriting the rules of our marriage, one calculated step at a time. Tuesday dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of morning that makes you want to linger under the covers. But I had no time for nostalgia. Claire was already gone when I woke, the house eerily silent except for the soft hum of her laptop still running in the bedroom. Her performance was flawless, short, clipped replies when I greeted her, eyes fixed on screens, a cool detachment that felt more like a wall than distance. She was dressed in a charcoal gray sweater that hugged her slender frame, paired with skinny black jeans and ankle boots that clicked purposefully on the hardwood. A delicate gold bracelet circled her wrist, catching the morning light like a subtle challenge. I caught myself wondering for a moment if she realized how much effort she was putting into this act, how carefully she'd crafted this version of herself to prove some invisible point. Then I reminded myself, she didn't see me anymore. I was just part of the set. I grabbed my phone and scheduled a moving company for Thursday afternoon. No point in dragging this out longer than necessary. I wanted the furniture gone, the last ties severed. Later, I made my third trip to the storage unit. This time, I moved sports gear, my mountain bike, hiking boots, and the camping equipment Claire never understood. I packed my favorite leather jacket, the one I'd worn during our trip to the Lake District, and a couple of framed photos of my parents. Back home, Claire was in the kitchen, headphones in, tapping out messages on her phone. I caught a glimpse of her profile, sharp cheekbones, a hint of tension around her mouth, a lip gloss that caught the light just enough to remind me she was still trying to be seen, even while pretending to be invisible. I placed a box in the hallway, careful not to disturb anything else. The quiet thud echoed like a small declaration. I was leaving. Her phone buzzed, and she laughed softly. Tanya's voice no doubt on the other end, the same toxic cheerleading that had set this all in motion. I wanted to shout, "Hey, you're losing him." Instead, I just packed. That night, as Claire drifted off to a restless sleep beside me, I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart pounding with a strange mix of sadness and resolve. I wasn't angry, not really. I was disappointed. Disappointed that the woman I loved had been convinced to treat me like a test, a puzzle to solve, rather than a partner to trust. I stared up at the ceiling, the shadows stretching across the room like silent witnesses. Tomorrow was Wednesday, 3 days in, halfway through her experiment, and halfway through my plan. I didn't know what the end would bring, but I knew one thing for sure. No one gets to play with my heart like a game piece and walk away unscathed. Tomorrow, the real reckoning would begin. Wednesday morning broke with a quiet tension that clung to the air like fog over the river. Claire was already gone when I stepped into the kitchen, her absence as palpable as the stale coffee she'd left in the pot. The house felt emptier, colder, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I took a slow sip from my mug and checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls, just the steady hum of silence. I spent the morning coordinating the movers, making sure every detail was covered. The leather recliner from the living room, the oak dresser from the bedroom, the desk where I'd spent countless hours working late into the night. All of it would be gone by the end of the day. When the moving crew arrived, Claire was still nowhere to be seen. I packed up the last of my clothes, folding each shirt with a strange mix of detachment and finality. I slipped my grandfather's watch into my jacket pocket, a talisman against the storm. As the furniture disappeared out the front door, I felt a curious sense of relief. Not because I was escaping, but because I was reclaiming something I'd lost somewhere along the way, my own space, my own life. By mid-afternoon, I was at the solicitor's office again, signing the final papers to separate our utilities. My name was off the water and electricity bills, leaving Claire to handle the household alone. Back home, the living room looked strange, half empty, like a stage set dismantled after the final act. Claire's voice drifted faintly from the bedroom, laughter punctuating another call with her coworkers. I paused outside the door, catching a glimpse of her through the crack. She was wearing a crimson blouse that contrasted sharply with her pale skin, the neckline teasing just enough to hint at the confidence she was trying to project. A thin silver chain glinted at her throat, a small pendant resting just above her collarbone. For a moment, I wondered if she saw me as anything other than an obstacle. That evening, I left a note on the kitchen counter. A simple message, clear and final. I wasn't ready to say goodbye yet, but I needed space. Real space. Claire found it hours later, her footsteps hesitant as she read the words. I could feel the weight of the moment, the silence between us stretching wider than the empty rooms. As I packed the last box that night, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about a week-long test or a game of ghosting. It was about respect, trust, and the fragile foundation we'd both taken for granted. Tomorrow, the end of her experiment, and the beginning of something much harder. Because sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought in silence. Thursday morning arrived with a heavy stillness that settled over the house like a thick fog. Claire was already out when I woke, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air, a bittersweet reminder of what once was. The living room was stripped bare now. The sofa, the coffee table, even the lamps were gone. It felt like a hollow shell, a stage cleared after the final scene. I stood by the window, watching the soft drizzle blur the streets of Ashford-on-Avon, my mind racing through the final steps of my plan. I spent the morning changing my mailing address to the new flat in Highland and updating all the necessary accounts, insurance, bank details, utilities. It was a bureaucratic maze, but I moved through it with quiet determination. Every signature, every phone call, was a knot being cut in the tangled web of our life together. Claire's ghosting was relentless. She came home late, slipping past me with a nod but no words, her expression guarded behind a mask of calm. She wore a sleek navy dress that hugged her curves just enough to remind me of the woman I once knew. Confident, poised, but now distant and unreadable. A slender bracelet adorned her wrist, its delicate chain clinking softly as she moved. That evening, I sat alone in the empty dining room, the faint flicker of candlelight casting long shadows on the walls. My phone vibrated. A message from Tanya, no doubt checking in, but I ignored it. This was my boundary, my time to reclaim. Claire was on a call in the bedroom, laughter spilling out in bursts, the sound almost mocking in its brightness. I wrote a letter that night, my final note before the inevitable. It was firm but fair, laying out everything clearly. The separation of finances, the division of possessions, the need for real space. Not the manipulative kind she'd been practicing. As I sealed the envelope and placed it on the kitchen counter, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and resolve. This was no longer a game. It was the crossroads. The next morning, when Claire found the letter, her face paled, and her hands trembled. She looked around the half-empty house, the reality crashing in like cold water. And in that moment, everything changed. Because sometimes, the hardest truth is that love alone isn't enough when trust has been broken. Tomorrow held the final act of this week-long experiment, and the reckoning that would follow. Friday morning broke cold and quiet, the kind of stillness that made the house feel like a museum, preserved but empty. Claire was still asleep when I slipped out the front door before dawn, leaving behind the silence we'd both grown used to. Against the kitchen counter, the envelope I'd left the night before sat waiting, its weight heavier than any words I could say. I locked the door behind me and slid the key onto the porch railing, a silent farewell to the life we'd built over 5 years. By 6 o'clock, I was in my new flat in Highland, unpacking the last of my boxes. The place was modest but mine, a fresh start with no ghosts lurking in the corners, except the ones I chose to leave behind. My phone was off, location sharing disabled, social media deactivated. If Claire wanted to ghost me, she was about to learn what real ghosting looked like. That evening, Claire arrived home early, buzzing with excitement. Her plan had gone perfectly. She was ready for the grand reveal, expecting relief, gratitude, maybe even an apology. Instead, she found an empty house and a silence that spoke louder than any words. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Messages from Tanya, Amanda, Jen, cheering her on, unaware of the storm waiting in the shadows. She found the envelope, her hands trembling as she opened it. My handwriting stared back at her, clear and unyielding. Claire, it began, I know about the ghosting experiment. I heard your entire conversation last Tuesday evening. I know you planned to ignore me to test my commitment. But while you were playing games, I was preparing to fight for my self-respect. The letter spelled out every detail, the finances separated, the belongings divided fairly, the lawyer's contact information. It was not a threat, but a boundary, a line drawn in the sand. Her world tilted as she read on, the realization crashing over her like cold rain. She ran through the house. My side of the closet empty, the dresser bare, the nightstand gone. She hadn't noticed any of it. She checked the bathroom. My toothbrush, razor, shampoo all gone. The garage was stripped of my tools, camping gear, even the winter tires. Frantic, she called my number. The number you have reached is no longer in service. Came the cold, Robotic reply. She texted. Message failed to deliver. She checked every social app and location service. Nothing. I had disappeared. The final blow hit when she opened the joint savings account. Half the money was gone, my exact share down to the penny. She slid down the bedroom wall, the crushing weight of what she'd done pressing down. She tested my love by ignoring me, and she discovered I loved myself more than being manipulated. That night, Claire called my best friend, Mark, begging for my whereabouts. Mark's voice was steady but firm. I'm not telling you where he is. He wants space. She called my brother, Greg, who echoed the same message. You don't test people you love. You especially don't let coworkers convince you to treat your husband like a science experiment. Desperate, she tried to visit my solicitor's office but was turned away. No contact except through legal channels. That Saturday evening, Claire called Tanya, Amanda, and Jen. So, he's really following through? Amanda asked. Yes, Claire said, voice sharp. Everyone says he's serious. His lawyer won't let me near him. His friends won't tell me where he is. And this, she spat. This is your fault. Tanya defended herself. We gave advice. You chose to follow it. Amanda shrugged. He just overreacted. Claire's voice rose. I ignored him for a week to test his commitment. How is leaving an overreaction to being treated like a test subject? Jen tried to calm her. Maybe you just need more time. Claire snapped back. While I played your stupid game, he was opening bank accounts, hiring lawyers, and packing up his entire life. Tanya's tone dripped with condescension. You're not thinking clearly. Claire's voice hardened. I'm thinking clearer than I have in months. I destroyed my marriage because I listened to 3 women with 0 success in their own relationships giving me advice about mine. Silence. Amanda finally muttered, Isn't it true, Tanya? You're divorced. Claire hung up before they could respond. The next week brought official papers, a petition for legal separation and a letter from my solicitor with conditions for any hope of counseling. Claire read the letter 3 times. 30 days. No contact. Then maybe a chance. A small, fragile chance. The weight of those 30 days pressed on Claire like a storm cloud she couldn't outrun. She moved into her new apartment in Ashford's quieter district, trading the chaos of our shared home for the sterile calm of solitude. The walls were bare, her steps echoing against them as she began the slow, painful process of untangling herself from toxic influences. She started therapy, a tentative lifeline in the fog. The first sessions were raw, tears, confessions, the harsh truths she'd buried beneath layers of denial. She blocked Tanya, Amanda, and Jen on every platform, cutting ties with the voices that had pushed her into this abyss. Week 3 tested her resolve. Tanya caught her in the parking garage one morning, eyes blazing. You're choosing him over your friends, Tanya accused, her voice sharp. Claire didn't flinch. She kept walking, her thoughts clear and steady. I'm choosing self-respect over toxic people. Meanwhile, I remained silent but resolute. My phone off, my location hidden. No texts, no calls. Just the cold wall of space I needed. On day 30, Claire made the call to my solicitor's office, requesting mediation. The next day, she sat in the sterile conference room, handing over proof of her department transfer, screenshots blocking her coworkers, the letter she'd written to herself, and confirmation of her therapy sessions. The solicitor nodded. I'll present this to Mr. Mitchell. If he agrees, we'll schedule mediation. 7 days later, in Dr. Ellen Vance's softly lit office, Claire waited, nerves taut like a wire. At 3 o'clock sharp, I entered thinner, tired, but with eyes clear and guarded. We sat opposite each other, Dr. Vance between us, the air thick with unspoken history. Thank you both for being here, she began gently. This is a safe space for honest communication. Dr. Vance turned to me. Mr. Mitchell, you requested this mediation. Mrs. Mitchell has met your conditions. Shall we begin? I nodded, finally meeting Claire's eyes. Claire, Dr. Vance prompted. Would you like to start by addressing what happened? Claire took a trembling breath. Andrew, I'm so sorry. Not because you left. That was the consequence I earned. but because I disrespected you, manipulated you, treated our marriage like a game. I let people who don't know you convince me to test your love. I listened quietly as she continued. I was insecure. Not in you, but in myself. I wanted to fit in with my coworkers, and they made our stable relationship sound boring. I believed them instead of trusting what we built. Why? I asked softly, my first words. Because I cared too much about what others thought. I wanted to seem confident and empowered, so I followed their advice, even when it felt wrong. I looked at her steadily. You heard them tell you to manipulate me? Yes. And you did it anyway? For a week? While you were right here? Her voice broke. I know what I did. I read your note every day. You were right. I chose toxic advice over honest communication. I tested you instead of trusting you. Dr. Vance turned to me. How did her behavior make you feel? I paused. Disrespected. Like I didn't matter enough for honesty. Like I was a prop in her performance. Claire flinched but met my gaze. The worst part wasn't the plan, I said quietly. It was hearing her consider it, get excited about it. Knowing the woman I trusted was willing to treat me like that. Claire whispered. I hate that I did that to you. Dr. Vance asked, what have you learned about yourself through this? Claire answered, I have to build confidence from within, not from others. I can't prioritize fitting in over doing what's right. Toxic people can sound empowering while destroying what matters most. And good men don't beg or chase. They have self-respect. I should have respected that. Dr. Vance looked at me. You set clear conditions for reconciliation. What would you need to see from Claire to believe she's genuinely changed? I leaned forward. Consistency over time. Respecting boundaries when it's uncomfortable. The transfer, blocking toxic contacts, therapy, actions, not words. Most importantly, understanding why what she did was wrong, fundamentally. Claire nodded, tears flowing. I do understand. Dr. Vance asked the crucial question. Knowing everything now, are you willing to try couples counseling? I was quiet. Claire held her breath. Finally, I said, yes, but with conditions. Legal separation continues. Weekly sessions for at least 3 months. No excuses, no contact with those coworkers. If I sense insincerity, I'm done. Claire asked softly. And if I prove I've changed? Then we reevaluate. Maybe try living together again. Maybe renew vows on a stronger foundation. But maybe isn't a guarantee. It's a possibility. She nodded, tears streaming. Possibility is more than I deserve. I softened. It's more than most would give you. I made vows for better or worse. This is worse, but I'm willing to see if we can get back to better. The first steps toward healing had begun. Over the next few weeks, we cautiously navigated the fragile path of rebuilding. Therapy sessions became our lifeline. Raw, honest conversations replacing the silence and suspicion that had grown between us. I still carried the weight of betrayal, but Claire showed up each time, unguarded and determined. By week 5, something shifted. During a session, a genuine smile broke through my guarded expression for the first time in months. Afterward, we met for coffee at the Willow Cafe in the heart of Ashford. The air between us was tentative, but beneath the surface, hope stirred. I miss you, I admitted quietly, but I don't miss who you were when you listened to them. Claire reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. I don't want to be that person again. Month 4 brought its true test. Claire ran into Amanda at a local coffee shop. Amanda approached with a forced smile. Claire, I know things got heated, but we were just trying to help. Claire felt the old pull, to smooth things over, avoid conflict, be liked. But then she thought of me, of what prioritizing toxic voices had cost her. No, Amanda, she said firmly. You weren't trying to help. You projected your dysfunction onto my marriage. I'm not interested in rekindling that friendship. Amanda's face hardened. Andrew's really got you brainwashed. Claire shook her head. He held me accountable. There's a difference. She walked away, leaving Amanda standing there, stunned. That night, Claire shared the encounter during our session. I asked, How did it feel? Hard, she said, eyes steady. But right. I didn't need you there to make that choice. I made it because it was the right thing. I nodded. That's what I needed to see. Month 5 brought our first real date since the fracture. A dinner at Rioja, a cozy bistro in the city center. The candles flickered softly as we talked, laughter easing the tension. At the end of the night, I kissed her forehead. I'm getting there, she whispered. I'm getting back to us. 6 weeks later, I said it first. I still love you. I never stopped. I just stopped feeling safe. Her eyes filled with tears. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you feel safe with me again. 6 months after moving out, I told Dr. Vance we were ready. That Saturday, I returned home. Claire had prepared the space simply. My side of the closet empty and waiting, my favorite coffee stocked. No performance, just partnership. That evening, we sat on our back patio, the same spot where we'd planned our wedding 5 years before. I never thought we'd be here again, Claire said quietly. I thought I'd lost you forever. You almost did, I admitted. If you'd made excuses, blamed me, or pressured me during those 30 days, I would have filed for divorce. I know, she said softly. But you didn't. You accepted the consequences, made real changes, and gave me space without pressure. I took her hand. That's why I'm back. Not because I forgot what happened, but because you showed you understood it. The road had been brutal, but we'd rebuilt something stronger, founded on honesty, respect, and real commitment. But as the night deepened, a shadow flickered across my mind, a silent question lingering like a chill. Had we truly escaped the ghosts of the past? Because some wounds run deeper than time, and some lessons come wrapped in mysteries yet to be unraveled. The following weeks were a delicate dance, each step forward shadowed by the memory of what nearly tore us apart. We hosted a dinner party one crisp autumn evening, surrounded by close friends who had witnessed our journey. Mark raised his glass, voice warm and steady. To Tom and Claire, who've shown us that relationships aren't about tests or games, but about honesty and real commitment. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the room, a celebration of renewal. Later, as the last guests left and the house settled into quiet, I caught Claire's gaze across the room. You know what's different now? She asked softly. I smiled. What? Before, I loved you but was comfortable. Now, I love you and appreciate you. I don't take you for granted. She leaned in, whispering, I didn't lose you. I lost you, and I had to earn you back. I nodded slowly. Maybe we both learned something. You learned tests destroy trust. I learned consequences create clarity. And together, we learned a relationship is only as strong as the boundaries protecting it. That night, lying in bed, Claire broke the silence. Do you think we're stronger now? I thought about it. Yes, because we rebuilt on honesty instead of assumptions, boundaries instead of blind faith. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to understand. She rested her head on my shoulder. Don't be sorry forever. Be better forever. That's the real apology. I know, I said softly, because if you don't, I won't hesitate to leave again. Not a threat. A boundary clear, firm, and fair. She smiled against my skin. I will. I promise. I knew she meant it. But just as we embraced that fragile hope, a faint, unexpected message pinged on my phone. A notification from an unknown number. It was a photo. A blurred figure standing outside our old home, the street lamp casting long shadows. No text. No explanation. Just a silent reminder that some ghosts don't stay buried. And that sometimes the past has a way of coming back when you least expect it. The question now wasn't whether we could rebuild. It was what or who was still watching from the shadows. The story isn't over. Not yet.